And so could you hold my hand and walk me through a production, a simple one, whether it be a
Okay.
commercial or a short film or something like that, and walk with me to help me understand from concept to completion what a creative producer is going to need to execute on.
So, I am the CEO of That Child Got Talent Entertainment, which is my production company. And our motto is development through fruition, right? What does that mean? That means, Jack comes up to me and he's like, Nerissa, I have a script. And I'm like, you know what? Even better, let's use Eleanor, because I'm actually working on a script with her. Eleanor came up to me via somebody and says, I have a script and I would really love your opinion. Okay, great. Went to a read through, gave my opinion, asked some questions, but because I was engaged in the subject matter, my questions really hit home for her. And so she went back to her drawing board. She did some research, whatever. She invited me to come back. I attended another read through, went back, got her some, this was the development, right? We were developing the piece. We were figuring out what made sense for the work because she had some holes, right? And she filled those holes, and by the time we got through that process, we had made it through maybe a year and 10 months, almost 2 years of really hashing out this script. And then and I thought that's all she wanted me to do. I thought that was it. I was just helping her with her script. No, she was like, I really want you to produce this script. And I'm like, okay. So then we start negotiating a contract. We look at what that means. I option it from her because she owns the piece. I simply want to produce it. So I have an option agreement with her. From there, I say, okay, it's time for us to start figuring out the pieces and the components that we need to make this piece work.
So before you get into the next thing, what does an option actually mean? Can you just explain a little bit for those who don't
An
know what
option
option means?
agreement?
So option agreement for the script.
So an option agreement is you, Jay, have a script and you're like, I want to get this made into a movie. And I say, okay, I would like the option to make that movie for you. And then you say, okay, but I either want to hand it all over to you and release all control, or I want to retain 50% of the control, or I want to release it to you, but here are my stipulations. An option agreement is a contract, and it actually, you have to take it to lawyers and you have to go back and forth about negotiations. Your lawyer should be asking you, what do you want from this? What do you want to gain? What do you want to see have happen? And then once you give all of that to the lawyer, then your lawyer, Jay's lawyer, will say to my lawyer, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about it. And then you give it to the lawyers. Don't sit there and I shouldn't be contacting you, Jay, to say, okay, now Jay, really in this contract, you really should let me do. No. Let the lawyers handle it because they're the ones that are going to talk about it. And your lawyer knows what you want. And my lawyer knows what I want. They'll figure it out. And then once they figure it out, they'll come back to you and I and they'll say, here, this is what we negotiated. Do you agree? And if you say no, then they go back to the table and they figure it out until they figure it out. And then you sign your name and there it is. It's a contract.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks for that breakdown. Okay, so
No
the next step is
so the next step after the option agreement is I sit down with her. She and I decided that we would both have 50-50. That was our part of our option agreement. And so she's an integral part of the creative process of getting this film together. So I had to hire a line producer because if we're going to get this thing made, we need a budget. We need to tell people how much it's going to cost to get this film made. And then my line producers set out to do all the things that line producers do the breakdown, do the schedule, all the stuff that goes into being a line producer. Then I had to hire a marketing person. And that marketing person helps to put together the deliverables that we need in order to pitch the film to potential funders. And when I say pitch, you've got to do a pitch deck, right? You can do an animated pitch deck. You can do a really fancy digital pitch deck. Most people are like, oh, isn't the pitch deck just the website? The pitch deck is some pertinent information that gets you in the door with potential investors. And once you get in the door with potential investors, then the pitch deck is your calling card. It tells them all about the piece. So then once you get past that, it's like, okay, well, we need a website. We need to be able to start to promote what we're doing once that money drops and we start making the film. What you don't want to do is start to wait to build all of your components. This is for indie film now. This is not for big, Paramount, Sony, like all these big conglomerates who have these departments built into their infrastructure. I'm an independent film producer. So I know at some point we're going to be blessed with the finance to make this film because we're out here getting it in. We're talking to people, we're meeting with folks, we're doing the best we can to meet other production companies who may want to get involved with what we're doing. So it's going to get made. So what do is what we do to make sure that we're ahead of the game when that dollar drops or when that millions of dollars drop. We have our components already in place. And if they're not solidified, they're at least so far down the process that we're not starting from scratch. Because once you get some money in pocket to make your film, you got to hit the ground running. You don't have time to make things, at that moment. And most people are like, oh, well, you're asking people to work for free. And I'm like, nope. As the producer, I got to come out of pocket in the beginning to bring people to the table to have them to work on the project. And yeah, I have people who are my folks, right? And so they know if I can't give you what you're worth, but I at least can give you something. And I negotiate a contract with them so that when the money drops, they get more of a stipend. So it's all about the art of negotiation. It's all about people and networking and knowing who you know. You got to talk to people. You can't just assume that meeting people on Instagram is going to give you an inroads into who they are. You got to find out what people's, joys and pains and all this other kind of stuff. You got to get to know people. That's why, it's interesting, and I digress for just one moment. It's interesting how people say, oh, these production companies hire the same people over and over and over again. That's why it's hard for people to get in. It's all about you always hire the same people. Well, you got to think about it from this perspective. When you're putting together a film, you're working with the same people 6-7 months, day in and day out, sometimes 12-16 hour days. You don't want to try to recreate that relationship every single time you do a new film. And so I understand why people hire the same people over and over and over again, because you've developed a rapport, you've developed a relationship. Not to say that we don't hire new people, because we do. But at the same time, our core is like you got to build that core. And so as a creative producer, once we get to the point where we're building pieces, we got deliverables, we got a website, got a pitch deck, we got a budget going, then it's up to myself and Eleanor, because she's 50-50. It's time for us, now that the train has started to move, it hasn't left the station, but at least it's moving. It's like, okay, we're checking everything's working. Now it's up to us to start to find other production companies to get involved with. We've got to find financiers. We need some people philanthropic giving. We need some grants. It's all about trying to find the money.
Thanks for listening. For more amazing content and episode updates, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and the Dr. J's Office Hours YouTube channel. Also, if you like notes from this episode and more, head over to drjaewilliams.com and download Dr. J's Gems. The notes include a breakdown of the conversation, key concepts, and helpful resources exclusively for my Office Hours fam. So come through. You never know. You just might learn something new. And remember, you are what you've been waiting for. Talk to you soon. Peace.